It's October the 16th, 2024. I'm going to be your host tonight. Welcome, everybody. You can call into these live shows at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. We're in Canada. Should nuclear plants surrounded by farms be closed to prevent mass poisoning of humans at supermarkets? I think it's a super important poll. We got 4 people in our show. My goodness. What did I ever do to deserve that many viewers after 10 years? Nuclear. Why worry about Fukushima when Nagasaki are safe? Well, it's supposed to be when Hiroshima and Nagasaki are safe, but looks like I snapped that off. And so can you imagine what kind of worm you got to be to put out a statement like that? To compare a nuclear bomb with nuclear meltdowns. The nuclear bombs, they're 50, 60 pounds or more. We're talking about 6 million pounds per building. It's really something, isn't it? They picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation in a nuclear wasteland. And you have the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute coming out, the Natural Energy Institute, not nuclear, coming out and doing something like that. Just that alone is enough to make you lose faith in humanity. The vending machines in Japan are singing, "Don't give up on Fukushima," in the nuclear wasteland. It's a pretty bizarre industry, isn't it? The in-route rescue robots. Now we're doing another time machine tonight. These are unbelievably important stories because it gives you insight into the original moments during Fukushima's meltdowns, which are still melting down, certainly. A rescue robot gets a Fukushima mission. And so they like putting out headlines like that because it lulls everybody into complacency. And it reinforces the propaganda. Robots nor humans can survive at Fukushima. And which is interesting because they had, 80 years to develop, or 70 years at that time, 67 years or whatever, to develop a robot to deal with the radiation, didn't they? They didn't even try. That's the incredible thing about robots is they never even tried to develop a robot. Not that they can survive that environment. Fukushima Daiichi, what is going on at the Japan's damaged nuclear reactors? Calling these buildings damaged? My goodness. It really does take a certain kind of creature, doesn't it? To play along with the nuclear propaganda routine. This was the 31st of March, 2011, the same month, at the end of the month. So 20 days after the nuclear meltdown started. The number 2 reactors posed especially nasty risk, emitting especially nasty risk. So that's reactor 3, and that's reactor 4. To suggest that reactor 2 is somehow worse than them, we see this a lot. And I mean a lot. But how is it possible that a seemingly normal, highly educated person could lull you down that particular road? So that's reactor 2. It's right alongside of reactor 1 that blew up. And it's right alongside of, on the other side is reactor 3 that blew up. But they want you to worry about that one. I mean, my goodness, this is the highest reading seen in the crisis, they claimed. It means that a worker who entered the room would top his annual radiation exposure quota exposure quota in just 15 minutes. The disconnect in that story is holy smoke. And the people that are regurgitating narratives, highly educated, incredibly articulated, well-positioned people whose job is to murder you by making you complacent and by lulling you into buying food from the nuclear wasteland or drinking beverages or drinks from the nuclear wasteland and poisoning you and your loved ones. Judging from the level of radiation around the plant, at least one reactor core went into a partial meltdown. And the byproducts are still leaking out from the damage to the containment structure. Reactor 3 ejected the reactor core from the reactor itself and the reactor, and ejected around 8 reactor cores from the top of the buildings that were in fuel pools. But should that be a crime to lie like that? Wouldn't it be safe to say these are the worst humans we've ever encountered? The people that write those particular stories? The risk that spent fuel pools could go into a chain reaction is low, as long as the temperature indicators are accurate. But some of the contaminated runoff may have to be dumped into the sea. If workers run out of space to store the water, not nuclear scientists or nuclear academics, nuclear companies, but workers, the homeless, the destitute, workers, you know. This is also a small risk of corium steam explosion. Small risk. It's a small risk for the spent fuel pools, small risk of a corium steam explosion. Particularly the number 1 reactor, which is the plant's oldest. The number 1, of course, was the first one to detonate. I just love that, to be in a public debate with these people. So their friends and families and kids and their communities and the planet would know what kind of real monsters exist. The pro-nuclear are simply monsters. To lie and suggest that this didn't happen is because it's poisoned every species on the planet, is why they're doing it, by the way. It's an extinction level event is why they're telling those particular lies. And there's so many of them. We're talking hundreds of thousands of public people coming out suggesting that this never happened. There's no other comparison. Just imagine, let me see. Your house is on fire, you're married, you got 6 kids, and your house is on fire, and you say to your significant other, the house is on fire. And they're like, oh, now stop it. The houses can't catch fire. And you're like, no, the house caught fire. House catch fires all the time. No, come on, now stop being silly. Houses can't catch fire. And stop being a fearmonger. And the kids are starting to catch fire. And you're like, no, the kids are catching fire. Well, no, it can't because the house can't catch fire. How can the kids catch fire? And everybody dies. And when they shift to the ashes of the building, all you can hear is this voice, houses can't catch fire. That would be the equivalent. I just, the level of hatred they have for us, I can't even imagine it, really. This contempt that we see every single day from the nuclear industry for 80 years is the most alarming thing imaginable, but yet the whole planet is out there completely incapable of carrying on a normal conversation. The spent nuclear fuel in Fukushima has been damaged by seawater, so recycling it is probably not going to be an option. The spent fuel went straight up in the air at enormous speeds. It was ejected right out of the buildings. And you can't keep up with the lies. You cannot keep up with it. And you can't keep up with the complacency of people. Just people watch this stuff, and there's tons of people out there who still can't get it. I just don't know what to make sometimes of people. Excuse me. So May the 5th, 2011, workers are going to enter a reactor for the first time since the blast. That's Reactor 1 over there. That's the one they're talking about. People are going to go in there. Sometimes it's hard to open my mouth without screaming, I know. Workers were set to enter the number 1 reactor building at Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant on Thursday. This is May the 5th. This happened on March the 11th. For the first time since an explosion ripped its roof off a day after the devastating March earthquake and tsunami. So no damage to the building is what they're saying, just the roof. And it melted down, Reactor 1, which is the furthest one up there. All the species are almost gone. Like the migratory species are almost all gone now since Fukushima. Supercell storms, we have an explosion of Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome. Schizophrenia. So Reactor 1, meltdown. Reactor 2, 100% meltdown. Reactor 3, 100% meltdown. Reactor 4, 100% meltdown. The fuel pools at the top of the building is 100% meltdown. The fuel pools at the top of the building is 100% meltdowns, or ejected rather. The fuel pools at the Reactor 2 all liquefied, 100% meltdown. And the fuel pool at Reactor 1 was the first one to detonate. It's 100% meltdown. And so it's really, I find it fascinating how many academics and scientists and journalists we see in a week. It's just the numbers in a week are frightening. There's an army of them every week lying for the nuclear industry. Right now, this is 13 years ago, we're going through the first year's original stories. They haven't changed 13 years later. It's just new people telling the same lies. Tokyo Electric Power said 12 staff equipped with protective suits, paper suits, right? Which are not protective suits in any circumstance, let alone nuclear. They're for painting your houses. Masks and air tanks would go through a special tent. Of course, it's simply not true. Even today, no one has ever gone inside of it. To set up at the entrance to prevent radiation leaks. So it's so insane. It was really fascinating because they were working on the cover story. They were working on that cover story like their life depended on it. And so this is fascinating stuff. The mask and air tanks would go through a special tent set up at the entrance to prevent radiation leaks. Clearly, when you see a person with the microphone, that's the journalist. That's the one who's going to sell you the story. And the scientists, the mad scientists, nuclear scientists, are the people that is telling the journalist the lie to sell to his vulnerable listeners or readers. They will spend 10 minutes each inside Reactor number 1, complete meltdowns, connecting 8 duct pipes to ventilators that will filter out the radioactive material in the air. We'll filter it, Dana. We're talking about that building, though. So it's not actually funny, but when I see those stories, and I picture the chicken necks cooking up the story, the lie, right? The fable. No, it's not even a fable, it's a blatant lie, isn't it? Groups of 4 will go in one by one to install the ducts into the nuclear meltdown. And they'll be working in a narrow space, not a nuclear wasteland, TEPCO spokesman Matsumoto told reporters at a news conference. This is a news conference. Go in, squint our eyes and I'll be good. You'll go back to sleep now. Sleepy. The workers are expected to be exposed to about 3 millisieverts. It's hard not to laugh, unfortunately, because it's so evil what we're talking about. But to actually cook up a story like this, of radioactivity in 10 minutes they will spend in the building, Matsumoto says. That's the explosion of number 1 over there. Let me do that one more time. That's the reactor core and the fuel pools, around 9 reactor cores detonating. And no, they're going to go in and filter the air. This is reactor 3, and the fuel pool reactor core is falling back down to the earth. Like if reactor 1, 2, and 4 didn't blow up, and only reactor 3 did, you still couldn't go near reactor 1 today because of the emissions. Under Japan's law, nuclear plant workers cannot be exposed to more than 100 millisieverts over 5 years, but to cope with the Fukushima crisis, the health ministry raised the legal limits on March the 15th to 250 millisieverts in an emergency situation. If you go to Fukushima, only get 250 millisieverts, 250,000 microsieverts, you're really lucky. It was amazing. You must have been on a bus going really fast. Japan finds tainted food up to 9th New York Times. This is March 19th, day 8. Now, the plumes were covering California at this point, by the way. Japan finds tainted food up to 90 miles. It was found. Tainted food was found in Florida at this point. Not tainted either. Brutally radioactive. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Fukushima Prefecture. Found higher than normal levels of radioactivity in spinach and milk at farms up to 90 miles from the plant. Well, officials played down the immediate risk to consumers. And we see that narrative a lot, the immediate risk. Just bear with me here. Ay. Bear with me. Yeah. Like if you're eating radioactive food, it's not like you're gonna, well, not right back then, yes, you could die of a heart attack right away. And 20,000 Americans, at least minimum, was known to have died for that particular facet of it. If you're eating radioactive food, your body attacks it with white blood cells to radiation for the rest of your life, and eventually builds a tumor around it. So when they talk about immediate risk to consumer, there is an immediate risk, is that you're producing so many white blood cells from the poisoning that your immune system is permanently compromised, and you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses and illnesses and diseases that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. The Tokyo Electric Power Company, with help from the Japan Self-Defense Forces, police officers, firefighters continue efforts to cool the damaged reactors on Saturday. The stave off a full-scale meltdown and contain the fallout. Well, here's reactor full meltdown. It's just, there's 4 of them, and the fuel pools, which are around 8 reactor cores in each building. And there's the fallout, April the 7th, 2011, in the bottom one. March the 18th, the day before this story, is the top one. The plume is covering most of the United States at this stage, right? Most of the Pacific at that stage. All of Alaska, all of Canada, Western Canada. And the eastern, right where I'm to, was covered on the 18th. The latest plan involves running a mile-long electrical transmission line to reactor number 2. Which is pretty interesting because this is the 19th. This is a few days after the tsunami has ran through it. Just with that alone, that means you're not... there's nothing functional. Let me bring up a picture of this tsunami stuff. The whole story is just insane, isn't it? Why do they hate everybody so much, I wonder? And there's varying numbers on how much of the coastline was damaged like that. This is all the way from almost 700 kilometers to 1,200 kilometers. And the 1,200 kilometer numbers were where people had died from the tsunami. So the tsunami comes in at around 4 to 5 to 600 miles per hour. It's enormous speeds we're talking about. 500 workers from the utility connected power lines on Saturday to the number 2 reactor. It's the building up there that looks like it's intact, surrounded by nuclear meltdowns. There is nobody going there. To the number 2 at the Fukushima Daiichi. Yeah. 500 workers went to the nuclear meltdown with these 2 right alongside of reactor 2. See, it's not like you're out in a storm and you got all the wind and rain and everything, right? Or whatever. It's radiation. And it pulses energy right through your neighbor's house, 2 houses down, their house, and then your house, and then radiates you in your bed every second for the rest of your life. Rescue workers are using fire hoses doused reactor number 3 for almost 14 hours. Telling a lie must be just... I think I did figure it out though. What's the most... I think they sit around and say, what's the most unlikely story? And they go, okay, let's go with that one. And I'm not saying that to be funny or something. I'm saying that I'm seriously saying this. Stretching into Sunday morning, spraying about 2,400 tons of water. Well, each reactor typically needs 4,500 tons a minute, 1,440 minutes a day, which is 1 million gallons per minute. There's 1.4 billion gallons a day. Radiation levels appear to fall at the reactors. But how can radiation fall at a nuclear meltdown? In the context of what they're talking about, it can't. It simply can't. Where a pool of spent fuel rods was feared to be overheating. Number 3 reactor. Well, the fuel pool and the reactor cores were at the top of the building. It ejected it, and I showed the explosion earlier. It ejected it right out of the building. Hi, Colette. And Colette's got power back a few hours back. And so we're glad to hear that. That's great news. And Hurricane Milton, my goodness, there's just the damage on the back of Hurricane Helena. That was frightening. Didn't have another one go up the same pipe. It's surreal, isn't it? Let's touch on the poll here. Should nuclear power plants surrounded by farms be closed to prevent mass poisoning of humans at supermarkets? And the reason I say that is because all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, and dumps are surrounded by farms. But all fuel that went through a chain reaction continues to split atoms forever. Once it comes out of the reactor, it goes into these pools, because if you put it in oxygen, it'll detonate, and it's splitting atoms. And the heat is caused by the atoms that are splitting. They pulse energy almost at the speed of light every second. And so that never stops. That's why they want to bury it a mile underground, for instance, right? But if you do that, it'll melt down at some point in the not too distant future. If any water is, because it doesn't need oxygen, once it comes in contact with water, it'll split the earth open. And then you'll have a massive nuclear meltdown forever that you can never contain, a mile underground, that'll bury itself deeper and cause just endless misery for the species. That's a bit slow, isn't it? Let me speed that up. There we go. Rocking and rolling. How's the censorship this week? Is pretty impressive, isn't it? I was attacked multiple times on my last night's video. There was the nuclear industry really freaked out. They phoned me over and over during the show. It's been going on for several days. There's a total panic going on. And so Reactor 3, when they suggested Reactor 3, a fuel pool was feared to be overheating at Reactor 3. Can anybody comprehend what they're talking about? Just bear with me here. I'm just over at James Luce's site. James Luce's site. We're looking to see if we got any new Calm Down Charlie videos. The Great Pump and Dump, Kevin Blanch's. Let's play this song, see what he got up there. And what James Lucid is doing is he's producing all this music, anti-nuclear music, but it's with quite a twist, actually. Let's see. I'm not going to play it all, and it's amazing quality. I hope James don't mind.
This is the greatest pump and dump in fucking human history. The greatest pump and dump in fucking human history. So, with the respect, this is the greatest pump and dump in fucking human history. Real fucking dump fucking.
That was pretty awesome.
From Los Alamos to AI game, powers the currency, they're all the same. Bezos born where the bombs were made. Fermi's legacy never fades. Yeah, it's the greatest pump and dump. Yeah, it's the greatest pump and dump. Look at the two, they're playing the game. Small modular reactors fuel the flame. From nuclear fire to AI's greed, pumping the future to meet their need. Just like Fermi, just like Bezos. The fires rise and one sees, playing with power down on their knees. But nuclear fire that AI scream, pumping the future to meet their needs.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? When you put your mind to something, and because music can change the world and stuff like that. We have you can go over to James' site and peruse. Hi everybody. Yeah, AI is something else, and it's about small modular reactors. Should nuclear power plants surrounded by farms be closed to prevent mass poisoning of humans at supermarkets? And so if they get small modular reactors in all your communities, there's going to be hemorrhaging radiation directly into your communities because they changed the rules, right? Thanks, James, for doing that music. But it's hard to appreciate because you don't get a lot of views, and don't feel bad. I hear you. I don't get a lot of views myself, but... And if you want to go over and listen to his music, you just click on his thing and go to his channel. It's that easy. And he's got a lot of music. He's putting out a lot of music on that channel. Right, it's about... so you heard it that time, I'm sure. That was hilarious how he got Kevin Blanch's on blast. That was just perfect. The spraying to resume later Sunday, and 11 fire trucks began spraying reactor number 4 as well. Yeah, it's Reborn the Movement. And we play one of his songs every night at the end of the show. One of his first songs that set the pro-nuclear community into an absolute rampage, to a nuclear brain meltdown on top of that the nuclear industry went through when he came out with the music. And we love it. And Kevin was out tide pool jumping. And they're naked. There's nothing left in tide pools whatsoever post-Fukushima. Idano, we hear his name a lot, my goodness, don't we? The chief cabinet secretary said the spinach and milk were the only products found to have abnormally high radiation levels. So how can you only have spinach and milk? In order for the milk to be highly radioactive, all the land is radioactive because the cows are just meandering along eating, right? A nuclear scientist is, all of them should be waterboarded at least 191 times. Just find out if that's their actual name, and then you can get down to business after that. The level of radioactivity found in spinach would, if consumed for a year, equal the radiation received in a single CAT scan. Well, a CAT scan, you turn it on, you turn it off, right? And it's a nasty dose, by the way. But when you eat radiation, it's in your body. And it sequesters your muscles, your organs, your bones, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for the rest of your life. And your body has to attack it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So shame on people that suggest that. I think that's Idano right there. I actually sat down. Well, that detected in the milk would amount to just a fraction of a CAT scan, he said. Yeah, why do they hate us so much? Why do they hate all the species so much? Why do they hate life on this planet so much? These levels do not pose an immediate threat to your health, said O'Donnell, so please stay calm. Well, they do pose an immediate threat to your health because you start producing a massive amount of white blood cells, which is blood cancer, right? You have less oxygen, less nutrition. If you're still in the environment, you become lethargic. Your body now is susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. Decontaminated spinach was found one prefecture to the south in Ibaraki Prefecture on farms 60 to 90 miles from the plant. I mean, they hate your guts. If you don't look at it that way, then you're making a big mistake. They actually hate your guts. I mean, like, and they're cowards on top of that. What they do is the most cowardly thing imaginable. Food safety inspectors said the iodine 131 in the tested milk. Why would you type it iodine 131? Well, I mean, you can find it, yes, and that's what your Geiger counters can find right away. It's nasty isotope, don't get me wrong, and it doesn't travel by itself, right? There's going to be 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine 129. And the 132, 133 are 9 times more brutal than the incredibly brutal iodine 131. And that's not to mitigate the iodine 129, which is brutal because it's producing such a large amount and it lives for so long. And so anthropogenic man-made radiation with a long half-life, millions of years even. So plutonium, right, for instance, 24,000-year half-life. It loses none of its energy in 24,000 years. It's pulsing energy every second. And it's the same thing for the iodine 129 or any long-lived anthropogenic man-made isotope. That's the difference. And all the scum and degenerates, and we see them all day, every day, right? They're very sneaky people. Are out there conflating natural stuff with man-made stuff. They're the most dangerous creatures. They're the most brutal creatures to go out and suggest. They're the most brutal creatures to go out and make those types of claims. I just really despise those types of people. Food safety inspectors said iodine 131 was up to 5 times the level of government's deems, just because it got, like, the last people you want telling you what is safe is a government. They're the worst and most wicked creatures human ever created. And spinach had more than 7 times what the government deemed a safe level. There is no safe level. It's in your body. The minute it's in your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. There's no moral or ethical or medical way to suggest that that is safe. It simply doesn't. Saying is safe means you should be locked up for the rest of your life in a prison before you hurt billions of people. The spinach contains slightly higher than allowable amounts of cesium-137, slightly higher than allowable amounts, slightly higher. And, of course, they've raised the limits from 0.1 atom per kilogram to 500 atoms per kilogram. Right after the meltdown started. But there is no safe limit because your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. And when it's in your body, it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Your body has to repair all the damage to the cells and chromosomes and DNA and organs and everything. And at the same time, every second, and it can't, it does that with white blood cells from all over your body. And at the same time, and for every white blood cell you produce, you displace a red blood cell, which typically carries nutrition and oxygen. Slightly higher than allowable amounts of cesium-137. The biggest byproduct of the cesium-137 brutal because first off it pulses energy 600 feet, almost at the speed of light every second, which is enough to damage all the cells and people across the street from you, for instance. But the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes. And plutonium is a massive byproduct. That's what makes the chain reaction happen. You need a lot of plutonium to make that chain reaction. And so whatever you can carry out the door at the last second, run away and leave everything behind. Leave grandma and grandpa at the hospital with dementia, and just all the doctors and nurses ran away and left them there to wander around and die. But it's like a banana and a potato chip. I'm surprised the population that hasn't gone after these creatures. Fukushima City, about 50 miles from the power plant, the levels were still below half of the legal limit. Every house in Fukushima City, which is around 300,000 people there, is entitled to be decommissioned or decontaminated. You can't decontaminate anything, let alone a house. But so every house and business there and building is so ready, school and whatever, is so radioactive. The malls, the shops, everything. It's the doctor's offices, you name it. It's just a living nightmare. And so they just decided to use, they built these reactors on a fault line, 60 kilometers from the tectonic plates, which means you have endless earthquakes all year, and which has a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis over 300 feet high. So why would you build a nuclear plant there when you knew this was going to happen? And then put all the reactor cores on the top of the buildings where you knew you could never get to, where you knew it had to melt down. Why would you do that? If you weren't expecting it to happen. If you didn't, because how could you not know this was going to happen? And now the big distraction, of course. It's not a distraction. A well-orchestrated event is about to play out between Israel and Iran, which will be a catalyst for the destruction of the rest of society, I'm sure. Because Fukushima was an extinction event. And you need something 13 years down the road. You can't hide it much longer. So now you need something to cover the nuclear industry's trail. And you need something as a massive distraction. You really do, in their eyes, is what I'm trying to say, rather. In their eyes, they need a distraction. In their eyes, because there's an extinction event, we won't be able to sustain the population, so we need something to cull the population. If we have a nuclear war, we can blame all the species die-offs and everything else on a nuclear war instead of a nuclear power plant. And you see this perpetual push all these years post-Fukushima for a nuclear renaissance, which is never, ever... But they have endless amount of support, they have an endless amount of money, but they still can't manage to make it happen because they're incapable and incompetent and extremely dangerous. And now what we're seeing is a possibility of a very real possibility, this one, because Israel can't win against Iran, right? It simply can't be done. And Iran has hundreds of thousands of missiles, hundreds of thousands of sophisticated drones that will carry big ordnance, big munitions. And they can take out all of Israel's infrastructure in just a couple of hours. All their light and power could be gone. All their transportation for the marine could be gone. All their nuclear plants could be gone. All their military bases could be gone in just a short period of time. They have no way of stopping it. And so one of the few ways they could stop it, because Iran likes to send their missiles in bunches, is do a detonation and destroy them all that way, right? Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities are deep, way underground. There's thousands of miles of tunnels, and there are all kinds of munition factories are deep underground. The only way they're going to get at that is nuclear weapons. And so they have to nuke almost all of Iran to get at that. And so Russia says they're not going to sit by, and Pakistan says they're not going to sit by. China, of course, is going to side with Russia. And then on the other side, America, no matter what Israel does, no matter how atrocious the military industrial complex in America, and Great Britain, and France, which is kind of pretending that they're on a fence right now, but we know they're not, are going to participate in a nuclear war in a drop of a hat. Great Britain is just unbelievably stupid when it comes to war. There's nothing they won't, there's no crime they won't commit. And somewhere over the next couple of weeks, we might all entertain our worst thoughts. But on the flip side, we still have to have a voice and a presence on this subject, on nuclear itself, that is honest. And one of the, you know, as far as I can tell, and I'm not trying to blow my own whistle pipe here, but I know for a fact we're responsible for scuttling a lot of nuclear worldwide, because the policymakers and the investors are seeking out any kind of documentation on nuclear because they've been fed a lot of lies and they're very enthusiastic about it. But then eventually they're going to come find me, or someone's going to play my videos. And all of a sudden now they're going to realize, wait a second, there's another side to this story. And my side is going to make sense, right? Because I'm very disciplined on providing documentation. I've been at this for a very, very long time. And I know how the big picture works. And so I know that as long as I reach a certain 5, 10, 15 people every day, I win. The planet wins this battle. But you got to have a presence so they know this is pertinent, this is imminent, and this is happening, and this has happened, and that there's a legacy behind it, right? And so it's a pretty weary job. There's no frills in this job. It's very difficult to maintain this whole this blog itself. I mean, how miserable. How many few people do I have tonight? Again, 17 people. And I've been streaming for 47 minutes on a show I've been doing straight for over a decade. I have 19 votes. These are dismal low numbers, right? No, clearly there's more people watching, but the censorship for the last few days or last couple of weeks is pretty rough. Let's just look at the last couple of days' statistics. You probably can't see it because I got my big head in the way. So, right now, they're saying I got 24 views total so far tonight. 24. But see, they don't seem to understand what makes me tick. They think they can drive me away or other people away. 165 views on my last video. 142 views on the video before that. Very dismal numbers. 38 likes. Last night I had 3 thumbs down on this video, which is unusual. 173 views video before, 208, 197, 181, 219. So I do less than 1,000 views a week that are registered. In desperation, so that other people don't watch the videos, this is why they give me such low numbers, right? But see, if you go and look at the bloggers, for instance, on YouTube, you'll see the most stupid bloggers conceivable getting 600, 700, 800,000 views in 10 hours, right? You see the most worthless bloggers imaginable, the most self-centered, egotistic types, getting millions of views an hour. But I mean, there's more people like you see 18 people are watching me. There's more than that working against me every day. In the nuclear industry to scuttle me. Everything I'm doing, stalking me. They got no one to pick on. There's 1,000 public relation firms. Their job is to attack anybody like me. I'm pretty sure all nuclear students, before they can finally graduate, has to disavow me. The level is still below half the legal limit. They picked up over 1 million bags around Fukushima City, by the way. Local radiation, topsoil. Local volunteers helped carry belongings of evacuees from Fukushima. This is the strangest statement. They're carrying belongings. These are volunteers carrying belongings just a couple of kilometers away from multiple nuclear reactors that are melting down. I'm flabbergasted when I see or hear these narratives. I find it very hard to be true. If they did, then they're definitely dead by now. Iodine-131, cesium-137 are two of the more dangerous elements that are feared to have been released from the plant in Fukushima. Well, the madness of that law is incredible. Because we hear iodine and cesium stories. We're talking tens of thousands over the last decades that we covered. They're very... This industry, it's an industry of cowards, an industry of monsters, isn't it? I haven't found anybody in the nuclear industry that is... And you won't either. There's nobody in the nuclear industry that the world... that the world recognizes and says, oh, they're a pretty good person, right? They don't have a single person in the entire nuclear industry that they can prop up and where the world would recognize as a decent person. They really don't. In fact, they use Bill Gates as one of their icons in many of their stories. They'll use Bill Gates. Well, Bill Gates likes it, so it must be okay. Which is one of the most insidious people imaginable. Dr. Harold Schwartz, a professor of medicine at Dartmouth, who studies radiation, he studies radiation exposure in people, said the contamination levels were low and the government's advice was probably reasonable. They don't show you pictures of these people because this is what you would be seeing, right? And when you grow up in a family of pro-nuclear, you're expected to go to university and be a scumbag like their parents were, and their grandparents, and their great-grandparents, and their aunts and uncles, and brothers and cousins. Asparagus, cucumbers, radish, tomatoes, other vegetables are grown in Fukushima, but have not been found to be contaminated. At the Fukushima plant, temperatures outside the 4 damaged reactors were lower than expected. These are nuclear meltdowns. I mean, they picked up. This is a 2019 story. They're already conglomerating the sites. Currently, in 2019, it was 105,000 storage sites throughout the Fukushima Prefecture only. We're talking about. There's 14 prefectures were banned by 55 countries. The food was. And the Japanese are actually, in this picture here, we got a few of these types of pictures, they're harvesting food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation in a nuclear wasteland where no one allowed to live for market. And how the world is not rallying about that and not upset about that and not freaking out about that is mind-boggling. It's actual mind-boggling. Nuclear danger still dwarfed by coal. Why didn't I see a comment by James Lucid earlier? Hang on, I'll open it up again. He said all nuclear power plants, or most nuclear power plants, are powered by coal. Let me see if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I read that tonight. Hi everybody, hope everybody's doing well. I always seen that comment there. Yeah, here it is. Let me bring it up here. Coal powers nuclear. That's a great comment, James, because we got a story here about coal. So all nuclear power plants are powered by gas, oil, or coal plants. They need two of them. So they need a gas and coal, or two coal plants, or two gas plants, or two oil plants, or two combinations, right? To power the nuclear site. Nuclear sites are considered like small cities. They're huge, they're enormous amount of energy. They can't run on their own energy. And that's a really important story, is remembering that nuke plants are powered by the things they claim we got to get rid of. You can't get rid of gas, oil, and coal because nuclear can't exist without it. So we're going to worry about that going away. Nuclear danger still dwarfed by coal. This was April 26, March, April. So this is a month and a half later. And he puts this picture there, which of course is a nuclear plant surrounded by farms. One must accept the risk of radiation exposure when flying in and out of Narita International Airport, the busiest airport in Japan just east of Tokyo, but perhaps not for the reasons you're thinking. 241 kilometers to the north is Fukushima, as the foolish crow flies, continues to leak trace amounts of radiation. And iodine-131 made its way into the water supply last month, but most, as physics would have it, has since decayed into stable xenon. I don't believe there is a stable xenon, is there? Let me show you if I can find the tables. Now it's probably not a good time, but humor me for a minute. I'm probably not going to be able to find it. Don't give up on me yet, though. Hang on a second. It's just I got the wrong glasses for trying to do this. My glasses are basically for distance. And they should have been right there, right? I'm going to have to give it up in a second, but let me scan one more time. I normally keep it close to my bookmarks so I can use it for studies, stories, and that. Tonight's... I can't find it. I didn't think it was this far down my bookmarks. Oh well, let's keep going. It doesn't work that way, what that person was claiming. So few in this Tokyo region have been exposed to radiation levels as high as someone just hopping off a plane. My goodness. These people should be arrested and convicted of crimes against humanity, every one of them. If you're pro-nuclear, you probably should be arrested and convicted of crimes against humanity. So Tokyo, let me see. Like the numbers in Tokyo are frightening. 36 million metropolitan Tokyo. In fact, Japan's government was planning to abandon Tokyo because of the radiation. Here we go. Tokyo area soil, like the numbers are extraordinary. 28 million per square meter numbers after a single rainfall. Almost 1 million atoms per square meter. And I equate a becquerel with an atom. Because that's what a becquerel does, is it's a pulse of energy from an atom. So I do it in order to subconsciously get people to conflate the two of them, because that's the best thing you can do. You got to learn to hate nuclear, because nuclear hates you and everything with replicating cells. The international, so when they suggest that few in Tokyo region have been exposed to radiation levels as high as someone just hopping off a plane, getting off a plane, like get the radiation from a plane, has nothing to do with anthropogenic man-made radiation. It has nothing to do with it. It literally has zero, zilch, nothing whatsoever to do with it. International Florida receives a dose of about 0.10 millisieverts, or the amount of ionizing radiation in 2 dental x-rays. They're completely different. The difference is incredibly on top of that. A lot of these stories is hard to cover because you want to puke when you read these. It's so outrageous you want to hold them accountable. They should be on trial and explain themselves. They should be dissected so we can study them to see why they're so horrible people. Such is the irony of nuclear energy, so potentially dangerous yet so much remarkably safer than any other energy source, namely coal and other fossil fuels. Dirty, dirty coal. Coal is perfect. Everything on the planet is already acclimated to its emissions through genetic superior selection. And coal doesn't create plumes that covers the whole planet on top of that. Like nuclear plumes are pulsing energy at the speed of light every second and are giving all the species full body x-rays. Coal lands quite close to the planet. So if you didn't put coal in the cities, you probably wouldn't have any health issues whatsoever from it. Coal, the emissions from coal is basically carbon. Carbon grows trees and plants and birds and insects and humans and everything else, right? He said coal is fantastically dangerous, responsible for more than 1 million deaths per year according to the World Health Organization. The WHO shouldn't exist. That's UN. They have zero credibility whatsoever. And suggesting that coal causes 1 million deaths per year is not true. The numbers are around 56,000 worldwide at best. Start with coal miners, thousands of whom die from mine collapses. What a strange statement. Coal even releases more radioactive material than nuclear energy. Folks, did you ever hear that lie before? 100 times more per the same amount of energy produced, according to Christensen of the U.S. Department of Energy, as reported in Scientific America in 2007. So suggesting that coal releases more than 100 times more than a nuclear power plant for the same amount of energy is absurd lie. It's the desperation of this industry. There is no bound. There's no limit on how evil they will be. According to the WHO statistics, there are at least 4,000 deaths from coal for every single death from nuclear power. I mean, there's nothing they won't say to make nuclear look good. All nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. That's why we have this poll tonight. Should nuclear power plants surrounded by farms be closed to prevent mass poisoning of humans at supermarkets? Like, if you get coal emissions on your food, you just wash it off. It can't hurt you if you eat it. You just excrete it, right? Just bear with me. The biggest problem, unfortunately, with this story is you can't rush the story. You just got to take your time. And calling this industry crazy is pretty bloody polite, actually. So this is Sellafield disease factory in the United Kingdom. And this is a satellite photo. And remember, the Sellafield nuclear disaster site is like every other nuclear dump or nuclear reprocessing facility or nuclear plant. Is surrounded by farms as far as you can see. So that site is over 1,000 buildings. So it's very hard to appreciate how big that site actually is. Which makes it harder to appreciate how many farms we're actually talking about and how much we're talking about. So if you just look at one side of the farm, of the site, instead of both sides, all nuclear plants will look like this with a satellite photo, or the majority of them anyway. Because they're poisoning you. The fuel pools are all hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the numbers is more than enough to poison all the food every day for the rest of humanity's existence. Saying radiation levels continue to fall daily. These are the worst humans imaginable, aren't they? And you never done nothing to them. They just hate you. They hate your guts. They hate you. And when I say hate, that's what I mean. They hate you. I don't have a proper charger for my new phone, so I'm using a Bluetooth. And it's taken forever to get my first charge. Part of the reason why nuclear energy is safer is that we store the radioactive waste in drums, with the assumption that maybe in 100 years or so we'll figure out how to render it non-radioactive. Store it in drums. How many millions have they dumped into the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, I wonder? Just bear with me there, folks. Give me a moment. Trying to keep up with these crazies is a full-time job, isn't it? I'll get there. Just bear with me. Like, the lies they tell are astounding, aren't they? The lies they tell are next level lies. Just bear with me. I'm almost ready there now. You store the radiation in kids' teeth is more like it. Alright, here we go. So, sometimes you have to, at some point you got to admit these people are monsters. So they store it in drums, and the drums are typically for decades, where every day they had ships going out just dumping them over, and it's very well documented, just going out and dumping the drums into the ocean all day, every day. Britain in particular was brutal. And just, like, they put it in drums and then take it out and just dump it in pits. And a lot of times the drums are incredibly rusty, right? This is, like Donneray in the United Kingdom had pits where they just dumped the radiation down into the pits, remote controlled. But every child in the United Kingdom's in 2003 was acknowledged of having plutonium in their teeth. And so, as soon as it rains, these drums will rust. But here and now, nuclear energy problems are clear. The area around Fukushima Daiichi will be a ghost town for generations. No, they're moving them back. Even if it is deemed safe, no one will eat the food from there, given other choices. Of course, they just ship it, relabel it, ship it out of the country and relabel it, and then put it on your tables. Canada removed all the restrictions after 93 days, while the rest of the world banned it for a decade. 55 countries banned it for a decade. And so Japan was shipping the most radioactive food to Canada. No one want to work or go to school there, given other choices. Well, they're paying them to go there. They're paying them. They're giving them incentives to open businesses to keep people there. Wind turbines are noisy and chop up birds and bats after all. Why not use geothermal? Why would you even look at anything but geothermal? It's astounding, really, the contempt they have for everything and everybody. The sight of rotting human bodies, as well as fish, cattle, dogs, cats, among unspeakable destructions, is a profound reminder that the natural catastrophes in but a few minutes can dwarf any catastrophe that foolish humans can produce. No, well, Fukushima is an extinction event for all the species worldwide. Note to reader, I couldn't bring any potassium iodine to Japan even if I wanted, because the west coast of America had stockpiled the entire commercial supply, God love them, ensuring that anyone would need it wouldn't get it. So the person who wrote this story, Christopher Wanjank, truly one of the worst humans imaginable, eh? And he pretends he's human by wearing a suit jacket and a t-shirt. Really, truly a despicable creature. His Food at Work book and project concerning workers' health, safety, and productivity was commissioned by the United Nations. So the United Nations said he's such a monster, we'll pay him to write a book to destroy millions or billions of people. And that is the norm. Like, that is the norm. That's actually a picture of him when he went to Japan. Mysterious radiation may strike airline passengers. This was 2009. Mysterious radiation. Airline passengers flying through storms might have more to worry about than a little turbulence. A new study in 2009 suggested that if a jet passes near lightning discharges or related phenomena known as terrestrial gamma ray flashes, passengers and crew members could be exposed to harmful levels of radiation and a dose equal to over 400 chest x-rays. So flying on a plane close to lightning in an electrical atmosphere where there's a lot of lightning could get the people on the plane equal to 400 chest x-rays. There's a lot of people dying on planes. I actually got a cup of tea there tonight, but I'm thirsty. Just give me a second. I got some water right there. Just want to top up my glass. Topping up my glass. All right. I had a good friend visit me yesterday for a short period. My first cousin, actually. I hadn't seen her for 36 years. We grew up together in the teenage years when bonding was the most important, right? It was awful nice to see an old friend. It was unbelievably good to to see somebody that you really do enjoy, even if it's only for a half an hour, right? Reminds you how precious life actually is. Heroic Fukushima workers face staggering risk. The biggest risk to the workers are the journalists and the academics that I show you here regularly. They're the biggest threat to everybody. How am I doing here? Am I up to 90? Oh boy, I'm up to 96% on my phone. It could take another 10 hours to get me up to the... I'll show you the satellite picture. Reactor 1 is exploded, but 2, 3, and 4 are not. I think this is the 16th, was it? Yeah. So by the 16th, all the reactors had blown up. So this was their first... And there was satellite images available at that point. The workers are most likely clad in heavy protective suits with breathing apparatuses. Said Michael Murray, a professor of nuclear physicist at the University of Kansas. These are usually the worst humans imaginable. Protection can be uncomfortable. Typically, all skin is covered, thick gloves, helmets, steel-toed boots. Of course, they all have individual Geiger counters that are meant to lull you into complacency. You can't go to a nuclear meltdown with those devices because you won't be able to go anywhere. You'll have to run away right away. Murray told Life's Little Mysteries, the sister site to Live Science. Remember Live Science, the last story, the nut job from the last story? Kim Kerfoot, and when you bring in a lot of these academics, you know they're going to burn you. Another professor of nuclear engineering at the University of Michigan said there are several radiation checkpoints in place to protect the workers at a nuclear meltdown. When entering areas where one may have become contaminated with radionuclides, what about the gamma shines and the X-rays and the neutron bombardments, the beta rays, the alphas? Protective clothing is worn, which can be removed. The clothing becomes contaminated and not the person. First off, the atoms we're talking about, the best respirators you can buy, those filters are 600 times bigger than the stuff that they're trying to filter. So there's no way to filter it. The white suits, the plastic suits, not the plastic, but the paper suits, the Tyveks, which are just modified painter suits, right? Will block most low energy alpha radiation, but not high energy gamma radiation like X-rays. Well, like gamma pulses energy 600 feet. There we go. To counter that, the workers would need to wear bulky lead shielding or could stand behind objects. Hang on here. I got to bring up a picture so you can appreciate how lunatic that statement actually is. Like, these people scare me. They really, really scare me. So how do you stand behind objects to get away from the gamma shines, the neutron bombardment, the beta rays, the alphas, the X-rays? I mean, this ejected the reactor core and the fuel pool over the entire site and well beyond. Actual assemblies and fuel rods. You're going to hide behind objects. So we covered these stories because they're so ridiculous, but it's so evil what they do, isn't it? So imagine, this is a horrible thing to talk about, but imagine let's put it another way. Imagine somebody you knows. They die in a car accident and they have two sets of twins, and they have their cousins and aunt and uncle and brother and nephew and parents and grandparents in the van, and they all died the most horrible death imaginable. It catches fire, and they're running around on fire, and they get hit by other cars, and it's just the whole thing was horrible. And the local media comes out and says they died because they didn't have their seatbelts on, and because they were anti-establishment, so we shouldn't care about them. And they died because they didn't believe in nuclear, they didn't worship the nuclear industry. Or they died because it was better than politicians dying or something like that. If there was a story like that, I'd have 500,000 people on my show tonight, right? But it is the same story. It's just in a different context. Limiting exposure is also effective. There is no effective way to evade this exposure. That's why nobody goes there. Nuclear scientists never went there. Where bulky lead shielding or should stand behind objects at a nuclear meltdown. It's hard to comprehend why they hate us so much. But they're not talking about internal exposures. Nearly 5,000 nuke plant workers suffered internal radiation exposures after visiting Fukushima. Wear bulky lead shieldings. Have a nice day, Dana. If high amounts of airborne radioactivity are present, worker may wear respirators. How can you not have high levels of radioactive material with Medusa? Not counting all the other reactors blowing up and fuel pools detonating full of reactor cores. Or even carry their own air supply on their backs like scuba divers. This prevents the radionuclides from entering the body, where they can remain and continue to expose the workers even after they left the area, said the professor, Kim Kerfoot or something? There are stationary radiation detectors throughout the plant. The workers who clean up after Chernobyl were rotated through fairly quickly and did not seem to suffer many excess cancers. And so the worst humans imaginable. By the way, it's not just cancer. There's heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism. So adding that the nuclear crisis at the Fukushima plant is not yet on par with Chernobyl. It's not yet on par with Chernobyl. Aw, they love you so much. This is March the 16th. It was by March the 16th, it was 100% on par with Chernobyl, right? Another way to minimize health risk is to send workers in quickly to observe an area and scoot back out to plan the next move, according to the professor/monster. Experts say that it's likely the workers continue to perform their dangerous job based on a sense of obligation and pride, perhaps even if it's not in their job contract. Well, there is no job you can perform by the 16th of March. There's nothing you can do. Once all the reactors are blown up on the 16th. Lethal doses everywhere. And this professor clearly knew this. I believe the plant workers are performing heroic, valiant, stoic work right now at the Japanese plant, driven by a deep sense of obligation to the society. And I believe they perform their duties on a voluntary basis. John Lee is a professor of nuclear engineering at the University of Michigan. And so they bring in all of these people, and so the average person will go, we got all this expert and that professor and this professor, so it must be true. That's why they do it that way, right? Learning from Fukushima, September 30th, 2016. Learning to lie. Events over the last 9 days at the crippled 6-reactor Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant complex. So what's the date on this? September the 30th, 2016, but it sounds like they're talking on the 17th, don't it? I can't remember the story, even though it was only a little while ago I hooked it up. The single event of radioactive iodine release on March the 12th. The single event of radioactive iodine released on March the 12th. The single event. So now they're talking about Reactor 1, right? And that's that one over there, that explosion. That was 9 reactor cores. And it's all gone. All the uranium, all the plutonium. And so to frame the narrative, the single event of radioactive iodine released on March the 12th, the single event of radioactive iodine release seems, however, to have found its way into the food chain, but the third worst after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. So they're saying Fukushima, but that story must have been a reprint or something in 2016. The third worst after 3 Mile Island is worse than Fukushima and Chernobyl, they're saying, right? A former vice chairman of Japan's Nuclear Safety Commission, Sumita, wrote, "Every step TEPCO has taken is a day late and $1 short." And the release of information from TEPCO is even further behind. If this could happen in Japan, an industrially advanced country with a high level of safety consciousness, one can well imagine the situation in India. It's quite confusing, isn't it? That every time you read a story about nuclear, you come to the conclusion that there's simply nobody good left on the planet in the nuclear industry. There's not a single person out there worth saving in the nuclear industry. And that their contempt for you is 100%. They have absolute 100% contempt for us. It's a surreal amount of hate they have for us, isn't it? For everybody, for every species. Monday, the 28th of March, 2011. We've covered these people before. Goldenberg. That's her right there a lot. And work to remove contaminated water from the structures continue on Monday. What's the date on this story? The 28th of March. It's not even the end of the month. And they're saying, work to remove contaminated water from the structures continued. Airborne radiation has been confined to the reactor buildings. Well, that's a relief. My goodness. After all 13 years, that's the best news I ever heard. I'm not sure how they done it, but it's incredible. Yeah, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but... And water from the structures. Well, clearly nothing got out of that building. Look at it. How could anything get out of that? Vice President TEPCO said, regrettably, we don't have a concrete schedule at the moment to enable us to say how many months or years it will take to make the plant safe. About 70,000 people in a 12-mile radius of the disease factory were evacuated after the nuclear meltdowns, while further 130,000 people in a 20-mile radius were told to stay indoors. And this is where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. So the worst thing you done was listen to them. Literally the stupidest thing you could do was listen to them. The most dangerous thing you can do is listen to these creatures. And the government created confusion last week when it advised people within a 20-mile radius to consider leaving the area. It insisted the advice was given due to concern for their quality of life, not to exposure to harmful levels of radiation. But that's the same area where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive soil, topsoil. Self-Defense Force personnel in the evacuation zone said 30 people have yet to leave the 12-mile evacuation zone. No, nuclear to turn them incapable of doing something. Well, if you live within 100 miles of a nuclear power plant, you're being poisoned constantly. Every day, all day, you're being poisoned. And this stuff catches up to you eventually and shows up in all kinds of diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Residents who return even temporarily would expose themselves to a great risk of radiation contamination, Idano said at that point. And I really hate him. I really despise that friggin' piece of shit. That worthless, disgusting traitor's monster to our planet. If you picked up the radiation topsoil in Fukushima Prefecture, the whole prefecture, you would have a highway like this wrapped around the planet 4 or 5 times, full of 1-ton bags of radiation. Idano said steam may have been condensed, carrying water from within the containment vessels. Airborne radiation has been confined to the reactor buildings. So apparently nothing got out of these buildings, Dana. That's quite the relief. That's fantastic. I gotta get some tea here. I gotta get some tea before I scream. Can anybody imagine something got out of those buildings? Can anybody imagine that nothing got out of these buildings? How about that? Like if I showed you, this was your buildings, and I was your manager, and I sent you this picture and said, don't worry, nothing got out. Would you fire me? James Lewis goes 3 grams. 3 grams of sugar. It's a joke people don't know about. I'll go find it. Hang on. Beat me to it. Oh, I just cleaned out that area, so I should be able to find it. Hang on a second. That was a good burn. I'll show you. You'll get it yourself. If you don't know the joke, you'll get it in a second. I'll show it to you. It was a statement made by a scientist, a nuclear scientist of nuclear and quantum engineering, actually, in South Korea. Science outweighs irrational reasoning. You should go read it. They said the 1.37 million tons of wastewater stored at Fukushima includes approximately 2.2 grams of tritium. But here's what James was talking about. The discharges into the ocean from multiple nuclear meltdowns. There's 4 and 32 fuel reactors in the fuel pool's minimum. They're gone. Is equal to 3 grams of sugar cubes into the sea. It's like throwing 3 grams of sugar cubes into the ocean. This is a statement by a professor at the Department of Nuclear and Quantum Engineering at CAST, which is the government's institution, university institution in South Korea. That was hilarious. I like a good one myself. I'm running low on energy tonight for some reason. The lies sometimes gets the better of me, right? Let me see, where was I? I think it was down here or something, was it? No, right there. Oh, I know, we're down right here. There we go. Residents who return even temporarily would expose themselves. Very likely that the 20-kilometer area is contaminated with a significant risk to health. Excuse me. This is cesium-137, cesium-134, and 131 iodine gas and particulates covering the entire planet. And what was the date on that? I haven't got it in that particular shot. My apologies. Typically they're like 20 days when they cover the whole planet, the plumes all. And that's the only emissions on the entire planet that produces those types of plumes. Local authorities reported, however, that some people are already returned. Others forced out of their homes are coming to terms with the possibility that they may never be able to return. If you're smart, you're not going to go back. Worker at the number 3 reactor says nuclear fuel is gone from the spent fuel pools. It's gone. Well, I mean, when you look at the spent fuel pool, is at the top of the building. There's no top to the building. Yeah, it's gone. Some of the refugees are already beginning to accept that the vast areas surrounding the plant could be condemned as a nuclear wasteland. Well, the government's not. And the nuclear industry worldwide is not. That was hilarious. 3 grams. Alrighty, well. This one here. What do you think about that? That kind of sums up media anyway, doesn't it? And they're pretending they're in the top of the fuel pool, above the fuel pool, looking down on the fuel pool, 140 feet above the stump that's left. That's worldwide media doing that. I know for a fact that is one of the most frightening things conceivable that could be said. I'm going to give it up because I'm having a hard time controlling my anger right now at these people at the nuclear industry. And if I keep streaming, I'm going to say something. I won't regret it, but I probably shouldn't say it about the nuclear industry and the people that come out and lie for it and pander for it and toss humanity and 8 million species under a bus because they're so disconnected, eh? I'm always astounded when they show up in my site that they're actually willing to come to my site and try it. That blows my mind when I see that, right? That they would actually have that kind of hubris. That they actually have that much contempt. They would show up and my videos and regurgitate their narratives. We've seen them do it over the years. You can't count it. They've done it that much. So let's close the poll down. Should nuclear plants that are surrounded by farms be closed to prevent mass poisoning of humans at supermarkets? And because an interesting thing is that all nuclear power plants, except for a few, are surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. And that once you take the fuel out of the reactor core originally, the first time, and put it in the pool forever after, it's hemorrhaging radiation. And you kind of got to make up your own word for it, because the numbers we're talking about are perpetual dirty bombs by the minute. The worst type of dirty bombs by every minute are released from 1,000 fuel pools every single day. And they're all surrounded by farms. And they're doing that so they can poison you in the supermarkets. Because they kind of look like they're normal, right? And so does a journalist, see? But here's your journalist pretending you're on top of a building that doesn't even exist. That's how far they're willing to go. Because Fukushima is an extinction event. It's a national extinction event. You got thousands of each species of whales showing up over the last number of years, emaciated. And you got groups of birds in the millions, migratory seabirds, showing up emaciated, of different spectrums of the food chain. You got millions of Cassini auklets in 2015, over a million common murres. And the common murres, they eat anchovies and squid and sardines and krills, and the Cassini auklets eat microscopic animals. You have two different spectrums of the food chain showing up at the same time, emaciated and dying. We've seen the same thing here in 2022 with well over a million for 600 miles, all day, every day, common murres washing up, emaciated, showing up in fresh water, going up in rivers, emaciated, clearly, and the locals all describe them as emaciated. At the same time, there was a massive amount of dovekites, and so the common murres again eat anchovies and squid and sardines and krills and small crustaceans and species, whereas the dovekites were eating microscopic animals. And what was interesting was during that one, it was early, still early in the year. There was still a snowstorm. I camped out in an actual snowstorm, trying to get the documentation because we never had much to work with. And every community I went and talked to the shops and gas stations, and they said that the forestries and fisheries were coming by every morning in the communities and picking up the dead birds that were washing up, or even ones that were barely alive, and putting them in buckets and throwing them in their trucks and driving away. Incredible, right? And then when you see the journalists, like you got CNN Anna Curran, ABC Cecilia Vega, who's now and the press secretary for CBS at the White House. You got BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, which is the biggest media in Britain. ABC is the biggest media in Australia. CBS is the biggest media in the United States. This is just a fraction of the top-notch journalists, and every one of them, in order for this lie to work, has to come out and participate. Every one of them. If that's not the most frightening thing imaginable, what actually is? That the very best of the best are the first ones to cut your throat. I think it's stunning, really. It's stunning, right? And the censorship goes on. Incredible censorship. Thank you, James. James took care of me again tonight. Thank goodness. I wish other people would give him a break. Links are in the description if you want to donate. PayPal link is in the description. Links to my site to use credit cards. We've never had an issue, folks. And how the hell am I supposed to do it? Do you got any idea how much damage I can bring to this industry if I had proper funding? If I was able to build up and hire a few people to help? How much damage immediately? It would be immediate. Within 1 week, you would see an incredible difference. Yeah, hi Dana Nasana. Yeah, good night everybody. Hugs for everybody. But we're actually going to play one of James' songs that is still going strong. I still love the song. And he's got tons of songs I love, but this one is hilarious. It actually drove one of our nemesis, or perpetual trolls, known as Calm Down Charlie, that's the name of the song, insane. He actually went nuts and attacked us, lost his friggin' mind. It was hilarious. We're going to end the show on that song again. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. See everybody tomorrow night for the last show of the week, Thursdays. And we'll catch you on that one, folks. Take care.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.